So what is a recession in the United Kingdom or indeed the United States? Both countries could be in recession right now, but how do you know if that's the case? Well, go check out this video as I explain more. Hi everyone, my name is Simon Misiewicz out from Optimised Accountants, and in this video we're going to be talking about recession. And you may have heard an awful lot about recession, but what is it and how can you find out more information for yourself to make a more informed and educational guess or explanation of what you're going to do in the future. So I've researched the entire Google website. That's false. I've checked the top 20 articles that talks about recession, and a lot of them talk about a lot about their products and services. But actually Wikipedia do a very good job about recession, and in particular about the UK and US. So I wanted to really clarify that I am looking at UK and the US and what recession means in both of those countries. They do slightly differ, but actually when you get underneath it, it will be the same thing. So rather than you read all that, I mean, you can read it if you want to, but I want to give you a bit more of a summary review. So what is recession? And it talks about the United States here. So in the United States, it is defined as a significant decline in economic activity spread across the market, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Not talking about grammar here, about how that's a bit wordy, but nevertheless, it does summarize all the financial the economies and the components of it. Now, there is a simplified view of this, so we'll talk about that in a second. In the United Kingdom, a bit more simple. It is defined as a negative economic growth for 2 consecutive quarters. So negative economic growth means a decline, of course, so minus numbers as opposed to 0, or a plus number on GDP, or gross domestic product. So make sure that you understand that gross domestic product is GDP, and it does go into this snippet for the United States. I did say it will become simpler. This is it. So in 1974, the New York Times produced an article, Commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it says in here, the recession can be defined as one of which was 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Hold on a minute, didn't we just see that for the UK? Exactly my point, it's the same. So whenever you're looking at recession, when are we in recession, doesn't really matter if you're in the United States or in the United Kingdom. If you've got 2 consecutive quarters or 6 months, half a year for that matter, then of negative growth, which means you're regressing, then you are in recession. So how do you know this information without just looking at media? Can you get through all the media rubbish that's out there and identify the source of information? The answer is yes. And I'll supply that in a second. Governments respond to recessions by adapting this expansionary macroeconomic policies, such as increasing money supply or increasing government spending or decreasing taxation. So what they're trying to do is put more money into the marketplace. What we're seeing though is, of course, that the US and the UK in 2022, as an example, there may be future recessions which this all becomes relevant or not relevant depending on why we are being forced into a recession. But we have high inflation in many countries, which means that there is a lot of demand for products and there's not enough supply, and therefore inflation goes up. At this point of the video, we are looking at inflation because of fuel prices going up because of the war in Russia and Ukraine. There are other reasons why other items are increasing in value and causing inflationary problems. Thus, it's been suggested that both countries are forcing us into recession. Now, when we talk about increasing money supply, that means that the Americans have done this in the past, where they've given out their $2,000 checks or $1,000 checks for COVID with the pandemic. If you recall, Americans got this check sent out to them. Increasing government spending, so they may borrow from other countries, therefore putting money into the economy, and give maybe tax concessions alongside that. So decreasing taxation, they may say, well, we're decreasing income tax for you to have more money to spend, but that's going to cause inflation. So you have to now balance it up and say, well, actually, maybe we can't do any of this, and we will just allow a recession to happen. How do you know more about this? Well, if you're an American and interested about recession and getting more data so you can make an informed decision, an educational guess of what's going to happen next, there is the BEA, and I've put the link just there for you to have a look at, and it talks about the American gross domestic products and all the statistics that you could ever need to understand if you're in recession. Don't forget that we're looking at 2 negative quarters or 6 negative months of GDP typically, and that will tell you if we're in a recession. If you're in United Kingdom, we have the Office of National Statistics, and again, you can just get the information there. Of course, I'm looking at April 2022. It could be 2023, 2024. It doesn't make much difference. The two references are going to be very useful for you to make a more informed decision by looking at the real data as opposed to what the media are feeding you. Hopefully that video was useful for you, but please do not stop there. There are plenty of videos that I know that will help you build your wealth whilst reducing your tax liability. And in this video, well, this is the one I think you should be watching right now.